Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this live edition of the Art Cunningham Show. It's good to see you, and it's good that you're going to be with us for the next 30 minutes here on your favorite cable TV show, coming to you from Studio B in Brooklyn Park. Today has been a good day. I certainly hope that it's been a good day for all of you. The sun has been shining brightly, and if you were lucky enough to have air conditioning, you were cool, as well as enjoying the bright sunshine. On this week's edition of the show, we're going to talk about sex offenders in Minnesota. So stay where you are. We'll be right back with my guest. Straight ahead. Well, Dennis Benson is my guest. Dennis, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here, Art.
All right. Have a seat. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to talk about sex offenders in Minnesota. Dennis is the executive director of the program, and hopefully we will get all of the answers. Dennis, I understand that you've only been in this position a short while, but because of the visibility that this position offers, I suspect that you have had to do a lot of catching up. But want to know, number one, Dennis, how many sex offenders do we have in the state of Minnesota?
Well, let's break that down a little bit, Art, because in the state of Minnesota, we know we have roughly about 20,000 registered sex offenders.
Okay.
That's sex offenders who are most of which are under some level of community supervision. Mm-hmm. And then in our prison system of 9,500, roughly 16, 17, 18% of them are sex offenders, part of that 20,000. Mm-hmm. And in my program is a little bit different because I house the 488 civilly committed sex offenders.
Civilly committed. Explain that to
us. Civil commit simply means that the criminal sentence has expired, the time that they are to be incarcerated. They were then referred to a county in most cases, and the county attorney took a look at their past criminal sophistication, past record of sex offenses, and made a decision to commit them civilly. That's a civil process, it's not a criminal process. So then they go through an evaluation and assessment process, and then there's a petition for commitment, and if the judge upholds it, then they are committed to the Minnesota Sex Offender Program for civil commits. And they're under a civil commitment, not a criminal commitment. They are committed for treatment, and that's the thrust of our program. Both we have actually two locations, Moose Lake and St. Peter.
Mm-hmm. What is a sexual offense as defined by your program?
Well, it could be a number of things. We have sex offenders who are pedophiles who prey on children. We have rapists with high psychopathy, very sophisticated offenders. We have intrafamilial. We have men on boys, sex offenders. We pretty much cover the gamut of the criminal code as it pertains to sex offenders. But I guess the thing that separates our sex offenders from those that you would find in prison is again, the civil court has made a decision that we are so concerned about offenses they may commit in the future that we're going to commit them civilly to the civil commitment program for treatment, and hopefully some of them will ultimately get the treatment and move back into the community. I guess the unique thing about our program that is no secret is in 12 years of existence, nobody has successfully completed the treatment and moved back into the community yet. So it's a tough crowd. I mean, the level of psychopathy, dangerousness, and sophistication of these 486. Remember now, we're starting with the big net. The people at the top are on probation. Then we got the people in prison. And then down at the bottom is the pool of those that have completed their prison sentence, gone back to court, and been civilly committed into my program. So it's a very, very difficult and challenging group to treat. And obviously it's the group that communities are very, very concerned about in terms of the dangerousness that they may or may not present to the community if they are released.
Well, now you mentioned this this funnel. Are there certain levels that certain level of offender that only you deal with, or you find? Well, talk to us about that.
We only deal with civilly committed sex offenders. Prison system deals with the criminally committed sex offenders. If they're under a criminal sentence, they go to prison. And at the end of their prison sentence, the prison system makes a determination which ones should be referred back to court for consideration for civil commitment. And then the county attorney picks up the ball. They make a decision whether or not to file a petition for commitment, and then the courts ultimately commit them to my program. So in the scheme of things, I would submit that the 488 that end up in my program are probably the most challenging, deemed pretty dangerous by the courts, because most sex offenders at the end of their prison sentence are released into the community. They might be a level 1, 2, or 3 sex offender that goes into the community, but they're nonetheless in the community. Mine sentence expires, they go back to court, and ultimately they come to me if the petition for commitment is upheld. Now, some petitions are dismissed by the court as well, but those are the ones that end up in the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, either at Moose Lake or St. Peter.
Now, so all of the sex offenders in the state of Minnesota who would be at your program level would either be of one of those 2 locations, wherever they are in the state?
Correct. Yeah. The civil commits are either at St. Peter or Moose Lake.
Dennis, if you can, talk about the level, talk about the kind of sex crime that one would need to commit to come directly. Would one come direct from the courts to your program? Would they have to come, would have to go through the system in order to get to your program?
About 97% of offenders that are in my program first went to prison, were sentenced to prison. They did their 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. They reach their mandatory release date, and then they're considered for civil commitment. Then they come to my program. But again, it's not as much the kind of crime that they might commit, as opposed to the number of crimes, the number of run-ins they've had with the criminal justice system, the number of victims, and the level of pathology, what the assessments have determined to be. Are they treatable or aren't they treatable? Are they most likely to reoffend? Most of my people have the assessments would suggest that they have a high incidence or potential to reoffend in a sexual manner if they're released into the community.